Okay. I have to say that good morning, good morning to Georg, and good afternoon to Rosa. I'm so happy that we have a chance to invite both of you to join to come to the interview. This is a column for my institution, namely ep01. I am Theophilus Koch, and we have this column is the main idea to have this column is we trying to introduce the most innovative, most creative, and most advanced new book that released in the English world about psychology. So we hope that by doing this column, we can help many Chinese reader to know about what is happening in the psychology or in the psychotherapy world, in the English world. Yeah. So this is the point that we organize such a column. And today I'm so proud and also so grateful that I have a chance to come here to interview and to talk with Professor Rosa Spagnolo and also Professor Georg Nothoff. I'm so happy they can spare some time to join to attend this interview. First of all, I would like to introduce Professor Spagnolo. Professor Spagnolo is a medical doctor and is a neurologist and psychiatrist for children, psychotherapist for children and adolescents. She works at the Institute Filippo Smaldon for the rehabilitation of deafness, learning and speech disabilities, developmental disorders. She is primarily an expert in the treatment of cognitive delays, autism, and children psychosis. She has been working for over 20 years at neuromotor and rare diseases in newborns like cerebral palsy, epilepsy, severe sensory disorders. She was a founder and former scientific secretary of moreabilities.com, a network between medical doctors and other experts in the field of children rehabilitation. She is also a psychoanalyst and full member of Italian Psychoanalytic Society. She is the co-editor of the IPA webpage, namely the Neuroscience in the Age of Psychoanalysis. She is the founder and co-chair of Italian Psychoanalytic Dialogues, a member of the Neuropsychoanalysis Association and leader of the Italian group of the association. She was chair of the IPA task force, Freud UNESCO Legacy. She have two recent books that published is named Building Bridges, the impact of neuropsychoanalysis on psychoanalytic clinical sessions, and the dynamic self in psychoanalysis, both published by Routledge. And also, now I would like to introduce Professor Georg Nothoff. Georg Nothoff is a philosopher, neuroscientist, and psychiatrist, holding degrees in all three disciplines. He works in Ottawa, Canada, holding a Canada Research Chair for Mind, Brain Imaging, and Neuroethics. His research focuses on the relationships between brain and mind. The question driving him is why and how can our brain construct mental features like self-consciousness, etc. He is one of the leading figures in linking philosophy, psychiatry, and neuroscience, having developed non-reductive neurophilosophy. He authored over 300 journal articles and 18 books, which are translated into several languages, including Neurophilosophy and the Healthy Mind, published by Northern Publisher, and Code of Time by Il Mulino. Okay, so today we are proud that I invite both of them to talk about the new book just published by Routledge. The name of the book is the Dynamic Self in Psychoanalysis, which just released in late October this year. I think people can find this book from Amazon already. So about the book, the dynamic self in psychoanalysis is trying to build a bridge between two different but intertwined disciplines, psychoanalysis and neuroscience, by examining the self and its dynamics at the psychological and neuronal level. This this is the very brief introduction of the book. Sounds very interesting to me. So from here, I would like to first ask, because this is a really interesting, idea. So I would like to ask both of you. So actually, can you tell me, or would you like to share that what actually is the motivation behind the writing of the book? Why you have the idea? Why you have the idea to want to write this book and produce it to our readers? Can you share your idea about it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I answer for first? Thank you very much, Theo, for this chance to talk with you about the book. As you said, we asked ourselves about 2 years ago, is it possible to build a bridge between two different fields, such as psychoanalysis and neuroscience? We thought since its inception, psychoanalysis has focused on the mutual influence between the world and the environment on the one hand, and the mind and brain on the other. Maybe we thought the psychological level and the neuronal level could be caught together through the dynamic of the self. This is, I think, the topic of the book. North of.
Yeah, thank you. And how about Phil?
Yeah, of course, I completely agree. So when Rosa approached me whether I want to be co-author, and with that conception, I was all on board. However, of course, as a philosopher, I asked the question, how do you want to link these different domains? World, brain, body, mind. Yeah. And that addresses a key problem in current neuroscience, neuropsychoanalysis, because we don't really know how brain and psyche are connected, how the one neuronal activity transforms into the other. Then Rosa said, I do a lot of case histories. I said, great, and we'll probably come back to that later. And my role is to provide the glue between these different levels, which she describes so beautifully. More of that later.
Okay, yeah. So sounds very interesting. So maybe it's a good time for you to tell us that, to share us that in this book, because I already briefly read through the table of content. So can you tell me that in the book, how the book can present what you just talked about? How is the book organized, and to really to tell our reader about what you want to convey to our reader? How to do that by the book? Yeah.
Yes, the book is focused on the topic. The main topic of the book is this one. We thought brings out a new clinical and a theoretical perspective on, above all, on contemporary psychoanalysis. This is the aim of the book. Our emphasis on the transformations of the self referred to as the dynamic self. This is the title of the book. The dynamic self combines the focus on current changes for individuals and communities with the scientific contribution of neuroscience to psychoanalysis. The presentations of the clinical cases in psychoanalytic treatment, I think, can become a guide to trace the intersections between the psychoanalytic and neuropsychodynamic models, as Georg just said.
Yeah, see, and Rosa speaks of transformation. So you know that Freud and psychoanalysts develop a very detailed topography of the ego. Topography means spatial organization, shape, structure. Now we complement that by a dynamic. That's the title of the book, time. So space and time. So now the next question, of course, you ask, how do you make this transformation from brain, from world to mind, to psyche? And that's where space and time come in, because maybe the brain, mind, and world share a common space and time with the environment, and that transforms. Yeah. So that's the transformation of the much larger time scales of the world into the relatively smaller time scales of our brain, mind. And that's why we titled then also the book, The Dynamic of Self. So it's a double meaning. The dynamic means time, adding to topography, and Freud neglected the dynamic somewhat. Yeah, he focused more on the topography. And others too, you will see this also in current psychoanalysis and neuropsychoanalysis, that the real dynamic change from one moment to moment is often neglected. It's more a static picture. And of course, the other meaning is, in addition to time, change, also psychodynamic. Yeah. So, and that's, from our point of view, dynamic in topography, spatial and temporal organization provides the transformation, the transition from world, brain, mind. And what Rosa in her case histories beautifully describes, how these clients suffer from spatial and temporal abnormalities in their experience, which are often pre-conscious rather than conscious.
Okay, so sound very vivid to me, but maybe I will not completely follow the sequence of the question, but because some of you already explained partly in the answer just now, but when you talk about the case material, so I will really like to learn from you that when to understand the case material, to also to help you to using a real, maybe a neuroscience perspective also to work with the patient, or to understand about the patient, how you both collaborate to work on this. This will be very interesting, especially how you can come out to work also on a book writing about all this, to really to call like kind of like a chemical reaction between you.
So Georg gave me the chance to bring inside the psychoanalysis his competence, and at the same time, I think he is giving me the chance at the same time to rethink about some statements, some psychoanalytical statements introduced by Freud. But today, I think we need to rethink about metapsychology, about drives, about transfer, counter-transfer, about many technical skills we were trained by our society. So thank to Georg, he gave me this chance.
Thanks to Rosa. Rosa gave me a big challenge because she had all these beautiful case histories. Yes. And I need to explain them. And you'll see when you read the case history, there's some really bizarre and extreme cases, but that's reality. So, and if you cannot explain these bizarre cases, how these mental features, how the subjective experience of these individuals come about, how their defense structure changes, how their ego structure changes, yeah, how their attachment changes. If you cannot explain that, we're missing something in the brain-mind connection. So for me, when I saw these beautiful cases, I said, wow, absolutely great. Also, I'm also a psychiatrist, so I like these extreme cases because they teach you a lesson. They teach you extreme cases and you need to explain them. Yeah, you learn from the abnormal for the normal. So for me, it was a beautiful opportunity really to put this spatial temporal approach into practice. So and that's what I owed. So it was a challenge. And in addition to that, it was beautiful, and you still see it as a beautiful collaboration with us, which at least I also enjoy, and I'm sure she too enjoy personally. So that's the glue, that's the spirit, and that's nice. So two selves come together and relate and produce it.
Can I say, in addition to this, I think the book gives voice to the subjectivation of consciousness through the development of the self. This is the importance of this book. The features of the self, such as nonverbal and pre-reflexive skills, memory, images, space-time, emotional responses, and at the same time, verbal skills. I think they must be understood not only in terms of evolution or development, but as coexisting. This is the multiplicity of the self throughout human existence. We call that the steadiness of the self. And Georg wrote many papers on this steadiness of the self. We show this steadiness of the self and the brain. Alongside the features of the self introduced by this book, we highlight the central role of its continuity. Self-continuity is the focus, the core of the book, I think.
Yeah. Let me add to this. So psychoanalysts are usually used to the concept of ego, sort of more an objective second, third person description. What we want to target here, and exactly as Rosa said, a basic subjectivity. Yeah, a very basic subjectivity, which so far eludes us. Yeah, in both neuroscience, psychiatry, as well as in psychoanalysis. Yeah. And that's what we want to target. And that's where the core feature of the self, it's temporal, it's self-continuity. It's not some abstract, some cognitive abstract. It's a very basic how you integrate yourself into the ongoing time and space of your context / body and environment. Yeah. And that creates, that relation creates a certain temporal continuity. And that's a key. If you lose, and the case history is beautifully illustrated, if you lose that self-continuity, you lose your sense of self. You, yourself, the world, your body suddenly become strange to you. You cannot relate to that.
Understand. Wow, that is so important. I think you both of you point out the most important point, the major point. In addition to the creativity of the book and the very the spatial temporal idea in psychoanalytic theory is a really new things. So according to what you say, can you also share? Maybe this is a little bit challenge, but before this challenging question, I would like to ask what exactly will be the target reader for you when you write out this book? Who will you expect will come to read about the book?
I think psychotherapists, psychoanalysts, training candidates, students, all the people who are looking for more and more information about contemporary psychoanalysis. And at the same time, everybody can enjoy, I think, this lecture. Recalling what Freud said many times ago, he said, I have not always been a psychotherapist. Like other neuropsychologists, he wrote, I was trained to employ local diagnosis. And it still strikes myself as strange that the case histories I write, quoting Freud directly, should read like short stories, should read like short novels, and that, as one might say, they lack the serious stamp of science. I must console myself with the reflection that the nature of the subject is evidently responsible for this, rather than any preference on my own side. Just to say, today we can say, so please read the book as a specialist, as a technician, as an expert, or as simple readers.
Good.
I completely concur. So the book is not only targeted for a special audience of psychoanalysts. course, they can detect a lot of case material, therapeutic ideas, but it's also for the broader audience, because basic subjectivity affects all of us. So everybody who is interested in brain-mind, and that's for us, or at least for me, a question of the base, where is subjectivity coming from? That's for me the brain-mind. And I think I agree that psychologists, maybe even cognitive behavioral therapists who are open, neuroscientists who are interested in the brain-mind, philosophers who are in brain-mind. It's a little bit like look into the Oliver Sacks books. Yeah, he had beautiful case history and reached out to a very broad audience. Yeah, because why? Because he describes a basic phenomenon of life which everybody knows. Yeah, and sometimes struggles. That's what we try to show.
Okay, thank you. And so the challenging question will be, since there is so many stories, case material, and also some theoretical understanding about the cases. So actually, if I see this from a more professional point of view, if I'm a clinician, I will really, after reading the book, I will really like to use or make this as a use in my work, my clinical work. Can you share that how this book relate to your actually both of your clinical work, and how a clinician can use this book to help them to think about their clinical works? Can you share with us about this idea?
I think the psychodynamic basis as observation is an observation point. This observation point, psychodynamic basis, is a very useful point of view to better understand the therapist-patient's interaction during the analytical session. You can say neuropsychodynamic psychiatry, neuropsychoanalysis, psychodynamic psychotherapy currently attach great importance to the patient's internal world. They talk about fantasies, dreams, wishes, fear, self-images, just to quote some. Hence, the crucial question is, how can we exchange information about these different models of treatment? I think the book helps us to reflect either on psychopathology and treatment presented through these psychoanalytical sessions, and the clinical cases in the book show the influence of both psychoanalysis and neuroscience in our ongoing practice. So this is the motivation beyond the book. Read the book as novel, as expertise, as clinicians. I think you can find a lot of new idea about your ongoing practice.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, of course I concur and want to add, see, I'm a big fan of psychotherapy as a clinical psychiatrist. The problem is we do not really have an individualized form, and it's a lot of trial and error. It's a big problem. What I would like to establish is really a form of psychotherapy which is individualized and sort of on objective grounds and brain-based, not brain-reduced, because you need to operate in accordance with the principles of the brain. Imagine a composer. A composer, the composer, she or he, doesn't compose a melody, just some tones. However, as clever as these people are, they know exactly how to put the tones together that we have the illusion of a melody. So basically, the composer knows the brain much better than we do as psychotherapists. So that's what I would like to inject. And one key component of that is obviously time and space experience. When your experience of time is too slow, you might be very depressed. So then when you ask the patient, they cannot understand, and this time and space experience is often on the verge of consciousness, often pre-conscious. But when you explicitly ask the patient, they said, yes, you're right. Now I understand why I don't want to get up in the morning when everything is too slow. So it gives them a better understanding. And my hope, and that's extremely helpful, because the psychological changes we have we have no explanatory model. That makes it very difficult for the people to understand what is going on with them. So this explanatory model provides. And second, my hope that in the future, we can intentionally manipulate spatial temporal dimensions in the brain, in the psyche, through a very, let's say, what we call in a recent paper, spatial, and also in the book, spatial temporal psychotherapy. But that is the development of the future. That's probably our next book.
Theo, consider this. I'm a clinician, I'm above all a clinician. My source of inspiration are my patients, to whom I owe all my knowledge in the field of psychoanalysis. So all my patients taught me something. Another pillar of my theoretical knowledge, besides my psychoanalytical skills, is the research in neuroscience. Not only the affective neuroscience, but also cognitive neuroscience, physics, Evo-Devo theory, and the last but not least, temporospatial spatial neuroscience promoted by Georg. I think we need to have a lot of models in mind and to enrich to our job every day with the patients with many models. We don't need to have just one model we were trying to do in the past. We need to have many models, reading, studying about psychoanalysis, neuroscience, and other models, and then we achieve our own model, and we bring inside the session, the clinical session with our patients, our own model. But we need to study to know many models. We publish around the world.
Yeah, I think one of the problems, Rosa is touching upon that, is that we often just touch the surface. So remember this famous picture of the iceberg. And when you see the various YouTube talks of mine, I often now start my talks with that we just scratch the surface. Yeah, but we need to go back to the deeper layer, the bottom layer, because only if we address the bottom layer of the mind / brain mind, then we can really make a lasting change. Yeah, you do not just want to stop the bleeding. You do not just want to put something on the wound that continuously bleeds, and it will continue to bleed. You want to stop the bleeding itself. For that, you need to go to the deeper layers, to emotions, and then even deeper, as I would say, to space-time experience.
Yeah, understand. And the idea of a second book about how we really doing something to manipulate the situation, and to by you applying the neuroscience findings to help us to do maybe a better treatment. I think that will be very interesting also. And I really expect to see it. But one question is maybe beyond what I present to you before. Is, you see, in our I will say that sometimes in not only in psychoanalysis world, but also sometimes in psychotherapy world, some people, they will be skeptical about do we really need neuroscience in psycho, because neuroscience is like the science of robot, kind of like some people, they will think about that neuroscience is science of robot, is not so humanistic, so on. But of course, I have my own point of view about that. But when you start to not only doing psychoanalysis, but also trying to pay attention or do some neuroscience research, do you have this kind of conflict inside? Do I need to use data from all this experience or this data and to psychoanalysis? I'm really interested in that. Do you have this kind of conflict, and how you balance it, and how you make a good integration about it?
No, we need to think about the treatment as brain and psyche together. We cannot separate the brain and the psyche. we can talk about the brain, and maybe we use a sort of languages like neuroscientific language, okay? And when we talk about treatment, about patients, about individual subjectivation, maybe we use a language different, maybe psychoanalytical languages or other languages. It's only about the language, but brain and psyche are the same object. We don't have two different objects, the brain and the psyche. So we can talk about one or about the other one, but it's just because we need a language, the verbal code, to communicate with you, to communicate with the people, or we writing a book, so we need this sort of language. But brain and mind are the same coin. That they are not separated. This is, I think, the biggest achievement the neuroscience brought to us. This is the biggest achievement, I think.
Okay.
Imagine you do exercise, physical therapy with somebody. You have no knowledge of the heart. You don't know. You do the exercise completely independent of the heart. So you force the person to run every day 20 kilometers. So now you find out that the person has a heart condition. So you better tailor your training according to the capacity of the heart. Same here. You tailor your psychotherapy according to the individual capacity of the brain. That's what you want to do. The other point you mentioned, it's purely mechanical and objective, and we don't want that. We lose the humanity, we lose the subjectivity. No, remember our initial statement. What we want to say, we want to regain the original subjectivity. And our brain is intrinsically subjective. It's not objective. You investigate it in an objective way, yes. But it doesn't mean that the brain is purely mechanical, objective by itself, independent of your objective investigation. That's a confusion between your method of investigation and the brain itself. That's, for me, as a researcher and scientist and clinician, the most fascinating thing. The brain is intrinsically subjective. Our brain is basically the self. But the brain, how it is connected to body and environment, that's the self. Yeah. So there is no, that's just a methodological difference. Our brain is not objective. It's not a machine. If it were a machine, it would be dead. Yeah, it's very clear. And there would be no self, there would be no mind, nothing. Yeah. So it is intrinsically subjective. It is intrinsically mental. That's the fascinating thing. And that's why we pursue this spatial temporal approach, because that fleshes it out. And that's what we see in our patients. Yeah, this extreme experiences of subject.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Yeah, I completely agree. There's a point you point out a very important part, because I agree, because sometimes when we talk about neuroscience or some psychotherapy talk about neuroscience, is like it's a science to do research on a machine or some kind, because we got data from all this, and then they will think, oh, like this is like a machine kind of research, and then they will see the brain or the neural system like a kind like an objective thing that we can grab out from the human body to do some research. So that maybe this is why some psychotherapists they don't like neuroscience. They don't like it. They think it's like kind of like a very doing something on an object. They don't like to lose the subjectivity, the own of the mind, of the psychic world. So I think Jörg, you really point out the important part that to really to distinguish, to help people understand that is so important. Yeah, we do really need to learn, and I also agree that by having this bridging between the psychoanalysis and the neuroscience is a very good example to help people to know that actually maybe we do not need always, maybe not always need to have neuroscience, but I think neuroscience is also a good perspective, a good way to understand the psychoanalysis. I think this is I would think that this is a very important point, that this book can give to our readers. I'm not sure whether do you agree about it?
Yes, we agree. We need the psychoanalysis and the psychotherapy needs the support of neuroscience. And I think also the neuroscience and the neuroscientist needs the support of psychoanalysis and psychotherapy. It's a mutual collaboration, I think.
Of course, I agree. Consider the example of water. Water is fluid, can be steam, can be ice. We know the chemical formula of water. Does it mean that we don't care about the fluidity or the water as ice? No. If we know how the brain brings forward the psyche, does it mean that we don't care about the psyche anymore? No. We still look, we don't go out and test whether there's H2O in there. Yeah, we look whether the water is fluid or ice. It's very important here in Canada. Yeah, because it's so cold. Yeah, when you want to ice skate. Yeah, that's what we do. So meaning the phenomenology of water is as relevant as before the discovery of the chemical formula. But now I know as a Canadian and in general as a scientist, because it's all H2O, aha, it transforms from ice to fluid to vapor. Before I didn't know that. Before I thought, these are three different things. Yeah, now I know. That can only help me in the therapy of my client. Same here. Now I know that the mechanism by means of which the brain, neuronal activity transforms into psychic activity. Great. So maybe I can get certain psychotherapeutic ideas to better, in accordance with the brain, to change certain psychic states. So for me, it's an enrichment. It's not an enslavement. It's an enrichment. Yeah. And why you consider it only as an enrichment when you forget that the brain is intrinsically subjective. Yeah. Our brain is not objective, it's subjective. And then, no problem, it's an enrichment.
Yes, very, very clear, and yes, very interesting. And then maybe we come to almost the end of our interview. Maybe the last question I would like to ask is also it already mentioned by Georg just now that maybe you will like to write another book on how to by understand theoretically using the spatial temporal theory to understand the case. Then later how we can in a more advanced second edition of the book, like we do something, manipulate or change something. So, but related to this question is, actually, I'm also very interested about when you are having the idea of writing the book together, how actually you collaborate with each other. Do you like you write the case like Rosa will wrote the case material and send to Georg, and then Georg will write a comment about how you work on that. And if you are going to write another new book about techniques or how, so what will you imagine to happen?
No, it's not like this, because I'm a creative mind, no? And so I have a sort of chaotic mind. So I produce, and I sent to him a lot of idea, sometimes a clinical case, sometimes a theoretical statement, sometimes other. And every time I sent to him something, he, with a lot of quiet temperament, he read my statement, my writing, and he said, write down something saying, okay, Rosa, perfect, but you need to add that. We can see this, consider this. Very, very nice collaboration.
I see. Yeah.
Of course, I agree. I really enjoyed it. See, it was, as I'm originally from Germany, there needed to be some German order to the Italian chaos, but both need each other. Of course, I'm joking here. Yeah, no, it's a beautiful, because I learned a lot. I learned a lot from these cases. Yeah, and it's for me, this is the most deepest insight into humans, these cases. Yeah, you cannot get deeper, and it's an enormous privilege for me that I can learn that. So it's beautiful. And in addition, of course, we Zoomed, we mailed, but also we met a couple of times in person before COVID this year in fall. So it's also thing, and we had some very good Italian food together, which I appreciate very much. So it's really, it clicked. You can really say it's clicked. And you know, all that is usually on a pre-conscious level. And yeah, so I think it's very nice. And it's a clicking of mind.
Yes, I can imagine that when you both talk about it, I can imagine that it's a scene that you are interacting, exchanging ideas, not only cognitively, but also emotionally and the situation. And I can imagine, and I also, you know, really, when I listen to you, I will say, oh, that is like a very good kind of brainstorm that maybe one day I would like to really in the storm that listen to you, both of you talking to each other, discussing the case. I think that part actually will be, I would say that this kind of conversation is so important and so interesting and so meaningful. It is really it's a good thing that I really love to to participate. But anyway, I will not be the author of the book with you. But I think because of what you just said, I think not only me, but I think the reader of the book will really expect to wait for the second book between you. Yeah, maybe we can see more cases, see more, read more interesting, read more interesting exchange, or maybe collision between you. So hopefully we in a short future, we will see both of you write a new book about also about psychoanalysis and neuroscience.
Thank you, but now maybe will be about connectivity and about neuronal collision. Okay, so maybe, okay.
Would also be very grateful if readers have ideas or want to develop that further. They can feel free to approach us, and also their own experience. And I could imagine that the way we approach space and time, that the Chinese context is very suitable for that. I have been often in China before the COVID because I have affiliations over there, and I'm a big admirer of your culture and people. And I think that kind of dynamics, topography, more holistic approach to brain-mind, which we have, I could imagine that resonates very well. And I hope that we get some ideas, inspirations, and further developments.
Yeah, I'm really happy to see that. And of course I would like to see you again in China. And also I welcome Rosa to pay a visit to China, especially to Hangzhou, because I think
I want.
Yes, I think Gyo will tell you that actually Hangzhou is a very beautiful city, as beautiful as Rome.
Yeah, okay. Perfect. We come.
Yeah. Okay. So I think this is the end of the interview, and finally, I really want to say grateful to you to spare some time to join the very first of this column, the Book Express column, to talk about the new book that you just released. Thank you very much. And then before we end, do you want to add anything else?
Thank you, Theo. Thank you very much for your insightful support. Thank you.
Yeah, same, and many greetings to all the Chinese people. I'm really missing you because since COVID, I cannot come anymore. So I hope you're all well, and I hope to see you soon.
Yeah, thank you. And you too. And I hope both of you, you take very good care of yourself. And finally, I want to wish you a Merry Christmas and also a very prosperous New Year 2022. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you
Merry
very much.
Christmas to you.
Thank you.
Hope to see you soon. Hope to see you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.